Welcome to Night Radios, where every story is a soft whisper, and every whisper leads you gently into sleep. Let the world fade away just for a while. Tonight, I have a story just for you. Have you ever wondered what happens to a dream once it's forgotten? What if it never really disappears, but floats, waits, and whispers just beneath your pillow? Before we begin this gentle journey, don't forget to like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us create more heartfelt stories just for you. In the quiet of a long-forgotten attic, beneath beams wrapped in webs and old whispers, there rested a scarf named Rue. Rue wasn't just any scarf. Years ago, it had curled around the shoulders of a sleeping child, holding close the warmth of breath, the weight of dreams, and the hush of lullabies sung low and sweet. Back then, every fold of Rue was stitched with joy and the soft rustle of bedtime stories. Now, it lay still beneath a curtain of dust, its threads faded with time, its purpose quietly slipping away. The attic was a museum of memory. Boxes stacked high leaned into each other like old friends sharing secrets. A cracked window let in threads of moonlight that fell gently across the floor, painting patterns on the worn wood. Somewhere, an old record player sat silently, waiting for a song that might never come. Rue had been waiting, too. Most nights passed without stir, but tonight, something shifted. A breeze slipped through the broken glass, carrying with it a question soft as breath, yet clear enough to shake loose the silence. Where did the dreams go? Rue heard it. Not with ears, but with the part of itself that still remembered the soft heartbeat of a child pressed close against its warmth. That question sank deep. It wrapped itself around Rue like a forgotten tune, echoing through each thread that had once hummed with wonder. Where did the dreams go? Rue had once believed they were tucked inside its folds, hidden between the thread's tiny glowing things born from giggles, tears, and sleepy sighs, ... But now there were no small hands reaching for it, no warm cheeks nestled into its weave, only stillness, only dust. And yet, that whisper from the wind lingered. It stirred something Rue hadn't felt in years, longing not for the past, but for a purpose that still might be waiting somewhere beyond the attic walls. What if the dreams hadn't disappeared? What if they'd wandered off, lonely and unloved, just like Rue? What if they were out there, scattered in the corners of the world, needing to be found again? Rue, who had once held a world of dreams so gently, couldn't bear the thought of them being lost. Slowly, with a patience only time can teach, Rue began to move. It slid off the edge of an old cedar trunk, its fringe brushing the floor like fingers saying farewell. A soft creak echoed as it passed over the dusty boards, the attic's breath holding steady, as if watching. It wasn't a grand escape. No thunder, no music, just a quiet decision, made with the kind of still courage only the forgotten ever understand. Rue glided past an old coat rack, past a pile of winter boots that no longer had feet to fill them. The moonlight followed it, step by quiet step, as if guiding the way. The window stood slightly open, just enough for a scarf to slip through. And as Rue reached the edge and let the night air lift it gently from the sill, it didn't feel old or abandoned. It felt ready. The wind welcomed it like an old friend. There was no rushingly movement, soft and steady, as Rue drifted beyond the attic and into the world once more. Behind it, The attic remained filled with shadows and silence, but now missing one small thing, the scarf that used to cradle dreams, and far below, the trees swayed as if in greeting. Somewhere in the distance, a chime rang softly, as though something had remembered Rue even now. The breeze returned, curling round Rue's fabric like a promise. "Come find them," it whispered, and Rue, carrying nothing but memories and the faint hum of lullabies long past, floated gently into the night, ready to remember what it had once meant to hold a dream. The night held Rue like a slow exhale, carrying it gently over rooftops and into the open air. The scarf floated with the ease of something that had waited a long time to move again. Below, the town was hushed, rooftops sloped like sleeping shoulders, and chimneys rose like silent watchmen keeping company with the stars. As Rue glided downward, the air grew thicker, more aware. The breeze that had carried it this far began to shift, growing deeper, fuller, less a push and more an embrace. Rue felt it first in the way its fabric caught a rhythm, as if the wind were breathing with it, not around it. Then a voice came, slow and round like an old song. "Well now, that took you long enough." Rue turned, not with eyes, but with the sense of presence that scarves like Rue have when they listen deeper than the air. Drifting in coils and currents was a figure that didn't walk or stand but circled, swirled and stretched across the sky. He was wind, but not the young kind that chased kites or knocked over mailboxes. No, this was old wind, the one who had carried the scent of campfires from 1,000 years ago, who hummed through canyon walls and remembered lullabies even the sky forgot. He wrapped around Rue, not tightly, but just enough to notice its weight or maybe its wariness. "You look thinner than the last time I saw you," Old Wind said with a smile in his voice. "I've been still," Rue whispered, though it wasn't sure how long it had been since it had spoken aloud. "That'll do it," said Wind. "Stillness wears a soul thinner than time does." Rue didn't argue. It simply let itself drift in the conversation, feeling the motion of 1,000 unseen hands brushing past, the kind of hands that once tugged curtains open, closed bedroom doors, or waved goodbye without knowing it was the last time. "Do you know where the dreams went?" Rue asked. Wind chuckled, a deep, warm sound that echoed through the trees below. "Oh, dreams ride with me sometimes," he said. "They hop on when no one's looking. Hide in the sleeves of coats left out on porches, float up with sighs from open windows, but they're not lost. Not really." Rue waited, held in the quiet that followed, until Wind leaned in, as if speaking just to it. "They just go, exploring." The words sank like a pebble into Rue's thoughts, sending soft ripples through places it didn't even know were still awake. "So they're out there?" Rue asked. "They never left," Wind answered, in a tone that curled around the moment like mist. Then, before Rue could ask more, Wind drew it toward a break in the era kind of pathway, not marked by signs or fences, but shaped by leaves and branches below. "Go now," he said gently, guiding Rue toward the edge of the forest. "There's more to feel than to find. But before you go," he paused, ... The air stilled for the length of a heartbeat. "To find what's gone," he whispered, "look where it never left." And with that, he let go. The release was not abrupt. It felt like a lull in music, the soft end of a note. Rue drifted downward, slowly, the air still warm from Wind's parting words. A light drizzle had begun, the kind that doesn't soak but simply reminds you that the world is awake. The trees below stretched upward, their leaves collecting drops like little mirrors. Then, floating just ahead of Rue, a feather appeared. It danced, not with urgency, but with invitation. Pale and quiet, it moved like something that had no need to rush. Rue followed it not because it had to, but because something in its threads whispered, "This matters." And so, into the forest they went, one old scarf and one soft feather. Together, they drifted beneath branches that sighed and paths that hadn't been stepped on in years. Rue didn't know where the path would lead or what it was supposed to find, but the riddle lingered, looping gently through its thoughts. To find what's gone, look where it never left. It didn't make sense, and yet it made Rue feel less alone. Somewhere behind, old wind circled high above, still humming to himself, already carrying other secrets, other stories. Rue moved forward, guided not by direction, but by something quieter than memory. It wasn't searching for a place. It was following the feeling that maybe, just maybe, dreams leave breadcrumbs behind, and the first had come on the wings of a whisper, the second in the shape of a feather. What came next, Rue could not know, but the night held space for it, and for the first time in a long time, Rue did too. The feather danced just ahead, light as a whisper and patient as time. It drifted through the hush of early morning, brushing past tree limbs and dipping into gentle currents of wind. Rue followed without question, letting itself be carried where the breeze allowed, where the path didn't ask for direction, only presence. Soon the air changed. The green of the forest deepened, then faded, warming into tones of gold, rust, and burnt orange. It was the kind of quiet that carried memory not of noise, but of things once vibrant, now resting. Rue slowed, drawn into a grove where the trees wore their last colors like old photographs held out in sunlight. Leaves curled at the edges, softened by age and wind. They didn't cling, they barely held on. The feather settled, finally, atop a low branch. There, not far from it, hung a single leaf, large and amber with time. It didn't look tired, only complete, like a page at the end of a book. Rue hovered nearby, unsure if this was the destination or just another passing moment. The leaf noticed Rue. "You've come far," he said, his voice dry but not brittle, like the sound of warm parchment being turned. Rue offered a soft reply. "I'm looking for a dream. Have you seen one?" The leaf laughed, not with mockery, but with the kind of amusement that only comes from living through every season at least once. "Oh, I've been one," he said, rustling with a sigh. "Long ago, I was nothing but green hope, wrapped tight in a bud, eager to unfurl. I was the first blush of spring, a dream in full color." He paused as a breeze curled gently beneath him. "But dreams don't stay green," he added. "Not if they're real. They change. They grow old, and when the time is right, they let go." Rue floated closer, its threads catching the light. "Then you're falling because you're done." "Not done," said the leaf, his edges glowing like the last ember of a fire. "Ready? There's a difference." There was silence between them for a breath. Then the wind returned, soft, steady, familiar. The leaf smiled. "If a leaf could smile, I fall to feed the roots below, where new dreams rise and seasons grow." And with that, he let go. He didn't drop like something forgotten, He twirled, spun, and turned in the air like a ribbon, his motion a kind of quiet celebration. He drifted down in slow circles, graceful and light, until he settled on the forest floor. Rue watched the moment land, not just in the leaves below, but somewhere deeper, where its own thoughts lived. It had never thought of falling as something beautiful, until now. Is this what becoming something else looks like? Rue whispered to no one. No answer came. But Rue felt the breeze shift again, as if carrying the thought further than it could reach on its own. The forest around it didn't speak, but it held the feeling, like a bowl of warm light, and Rue stayed a little longer than it needed to. It thought of the attic, of silence and waiting, of holding on too long to what once was. It thought of the way the leaf had smiled, not because it was ending, but because it trusted what came next. Rue didn't know what that was yet. But now, it was no longer afraid of falling, and somewhere inside its threadbare folds, a question began to soften. What if letting go wasn't the end of something? What if it was the beginning of a deeper kind of belonging? Rue didn't have the answer, but it was ready to keep following the wind. Dusk settled gently over the forest, brushing the tops of the trees with a grey hush. The light, once golden, now sank into blue and lavender, and the air grew colder with each quiet mile Rue floated through. The trees grew thinner, more spaced out, until they gave way to an open field dotted with tall grasses and sleepy stones. At the edge of that field stood a cottage. It looked like it had been waiting too long for someone to come back. The shutters hung crooked. Vines had curled around its chimney-like shy arms. The path to the door had forgotten how to be a path, now just a memory of footsteps softened by moss and time. Still, something about it felt gentle, like it hadn't been abandoned, only paused. Rue moved toward it slowly, its fabric catching on a cool breeze, folding in and out with each careful step of the wind. As it passed through a crack in the door, the old wood gave a Silas a creak, more a small welcome. Inside, shadows gathered in corners, not with menace, but like old friends lingering after a long evening. A chair leaned toward a small round table. A pot, dry and quiet, rested on the stove, and in the hearth, beneath a collapsed tower of ash and charred wood, flickered something very small, a flame. It wasn't bright. It barely moved, but it was there, just enough glow to make the shadows dance ever so slightly. Rue hovered closer, its threads curious, careful. "Are you a dream?" it asked softly. The little flame flickered, as if startled that someone had noticed it. "Maybe," the flame answered, its voice almost a crackle. "I once danced in kitchens, warmed tea, lit birthday cakes. I used to be much bigger than this." Rue listened, feeling something gentle stir within. "But now I wait," the flame continued, not bitter, just quiet. "Wait for what?" Rue asked. "For someone to notice I'm still here," said the flame, with a glow that was less about light and more about longing. Rue drifted closer, sensing the stillness of the room, the echo of memories wrapped in silence. It remembered warm thrill, warmth, not just from fire, but from the way a child's arms used to wrap around it before sleep. The comfort of belonging, the purpose of being needed. It carried that memory carefully, and now it let it go. Gently, Rue wrapped itself around the hearth. Not in a grand way, not as if trying to save something, but simply to share what it had. The threads, though worn and thin, held a memory still strong enough to matter. As Rue settled around the stone frame, the warmth of its memory slipped into the air like a breath held too long. The flame brightened ever so slightly, then shimmered in a new rhythm. A dream isn't gone, it hummed, if it still warms something, and Rue believed it. The room didn't change all at once, but it softened. The corners rounded out, the air thickened with the scent of something that had once been home. Shadows on the walls began to flicker in new shapes, children twirling, laughter looping through empty space. A teacup danced slightly on the table, not from movement, but memory. Rue didn't say anything more. It didn't need to. It only stayed still, curled beside the little flame that was no longer quite so little. Outside, the wind pressed against the walls gently, not trying to get in, just making sure the house remembered the world was still turning. And inside, Rue stayed wrapped around the hearth, not to give warmth, but to keep something alive that had almost forgotten how. The flame burned, steady, not small, yes, but certain. And Rue, for the first time in a long while, felt useful in the quiet way that dreams often are, not loud or bright, just present. It didn't know how long it would stay there, but tonight, in the glow of an old cottage and the hush of a waiting fire, Rue learned that sometimes even forgotten things just need to be seen to remember how to glow. And in that soft light, it rested not as something looking for a dream, but as something quietly becoming one. Morning stretched itself slowly across the sky, pulling light over the hills like a soft blanket. The trees no longer whispered in sleep. They stood tall and still, draped in the early hush. A gentle fog drifted across the ground, curling around trunks and stones like a secret. Rue moved quietly beneath this pale sky, carried by a breeze that had grown thinner with the coming light. There was no urgency now, only a calm wandering. The forest was behind, and ahead lay a stretch of open earth, lined with reeds and soft clay. Then came the water, a river. It was wider than Rue had imagined a river could be. Its banks curved gently, and its surface shone like glass brushed with silver. But it did not move, not really. No rush, no music, no small chatter of current brushing against stone. Rue hovered above the edge, feeling something in its threads pull toward the stillness. The river didn't notice. It simply lay there, quiet and flat, like a thought that had never found its way into words. Rue drifted a little closer and spoke in a voice it hadn't used since the attic. "Why don't you sing like rivers do?" The question floated across the surface, not even enough to make a ripple. Then, slowly, the river answered. "I used to hum lullabies to stars," it said, voice low and slow, more vibration than sound. "Back when the sky was young and the moon leaned in to listen." Rue waited. But then the river continued. The stars grew busy. They blinked less. The sky filled up with voices louder than mine. So I stopped. The river fell silent again, its reflection smooth and unbroken. Rue didn't respond right away. It listened. Not just with its threads, but with the part of itself that remembered what it meant to be held, to be needed. It thought of the attic, of the flame, of the leaf. Each one had something they lost. Each one had waited. And here was a river, not dry, not gone but hushed. Rue drifted just above the surface, close enough to see the soft shimmer of light beneath. And then, without trying to impress or fix or fill the quiet, it began to hum. It was a tune Rue didn't know the name of. Maybe it never had one. just a small, slow song stitched from somewhere deep, something it had once heard through the floorboards of the Attica lullaby, not meant for ears, but for presence. Trickle low and shimmer bright, you still hold stars in morning light. The wind didn't move, the sky didn't change, but the river breathed. Not a full breath, but something like the memory of one. A ripple stirred near the bank, then another, reaching a little farther out. The surface blinked, once, then again, and then softly began to sway. A note, low and hesitant, rose from deep within the water. ... It wasn't loud, it wasn't proud, but it was music. The riverside, long and soft, as if exhaling something it had been holding for years. You reminded me, it said, voice now gentler, that even forgotten songs wait in silence. Rue didn't answer, it only listened. The ripples reached the far shore, brushing reeds awake. The shimmer along the river's back began to catch the sun, turning from silver to a quiet gold. Birds nearby began to sing, not because they had to, but because the river had remembered how, and Rue, wrapped in that small, sweet chorus, felt something unfold inside. Not loudly, just enough. Not everything needs to be loud to matter, Rue thought. Sometimes, presence is the music, and somewhere between the hush of water and the warmth of memory, Rue let itself drift again, carried, not by the wind this time, but by a sound that had once been lost and was now softly coming home. Evening curled around the hills like a cat, quiet and content. The sun had folded itself behind the horizon, leaving only the hush of lavender light behind. Rue floated steadily now, not rushing as it had before, not drifting aimlessly either, just moving with the rhythm of twilight. There was a peace to this part of the journey. The air was cooler, but not unfriendly. Trees had grown sparse, and the ground began to dip gently, as if the world itself were preparing to lie down. A thin mist stretched like a breath across the land, and the wind, soft and thoughtful, nudged Rue towards something ahead. A shape slowly appeared, a hill, at first glance, but closer now, Rue could see that it was more than that. ... Carved into the side of the slope was an opening, curved and soft like a closed eye. And as Rue hovered nearer, it realized the whole hill resembled a face not perfect or polished, but quiet and kind, like someone deep in sleep. Rue entered the cave without question. Inside, the air was different, still, but not stale. There was a warmth to it, like breath wrapped in memory. The walls shimmered slightly, not with light, but with the gentle hum of something remembering. And there, hanging in the heart of the cave, was a dream catcher. It was old, unmistakably. Dust gathered in its edges like time that had nowhere else to go. Its threads stretched wide across a circular frame, each line crossing another like whispers forming sentences in the dark. The walls shimmered slightly, not with light, but with the gentle hum of something remembering. And there, hanging in the heart of the cave, was a dream catcher. It was old, unmistakably. Dust gathered in its edges like time that had nowhere else to go. Its threads stretched wide across a circular frame, each line crossing another like whispers forming sentences in the dark. And though dim, the threads glowed faintly, like they were lit from the inside by memories not yet spoken aloud. Rue floated closer. "I lost my dream," it said softly, not as a complaint, but as a truth that had waited too long to be told. The dream catcher swayed gently, though there was no breeze. Then you haven't truly lost it, it replied, its voice like a hum that moved through fabric and thought at once. Only those who forget to look inside are lost. Rue didn't respond. But something deep inside, its fibers pulled gently, like a quiet knot beginning to loosen. Come, said the dreamcatcher, rest here, just for a moment. Rue hesitated, not out of fear, but uncertainty. And then, slowly, it drifted forward and hung beside the dreamcatcher. Not tied, not tangled, just near enough to feel the threads hum beside its own. Silence settled between them. It wasn't the kind that asks to be filled. It was the kind that allows space to remember. And in that silence, Rue began to feel something sternal around it, but within, it was warmth, not from fire, but from memory. The weight of a child's breath against its threads, the stillness of a night wrapped in soft dreaming, the way it used to fold gently over small shoulders and feel the rise and fall of sleep beneath it. Rue didn't move, it just remembered. And the dreamcatcher, swaying slowly, whispered once more, a dream isn't always something you chase. Sometimes it's what holds you together. Rue didn't answer, but something inside tightened in the best way, not in pain, in truth. When it finally drifted from the cave, Rue carried something new. A single thread, silver and fine, had woven itself gently through its own fabric. It didn't know how it had happened. It hadn't felt it knot or twist, but it was there, a reminder. A tether not to what was lost, but to what had always been a part of it. The cave behind grew quiet again, the dreamcatcher returning to stillness, its glow never fading, only waiting, and Rue, with its new thread of remembering, floated back into the night, not to search, but to carry. The sky was darker now, but the stars had returned. And Rue, though still small and light, no longer felt like it was unraveling. It moved forward not to find a dream, but to become what it had always been. A thread in someone's sleep, a warmth in someone's night, and perhaps, one day, a part of a dream someone else was ready to remember. The world had been quiet for some time, walking softly with Rue, letting it rest in warm memories and thoughtful silences. But quiet can change. It can shift when you least expect it, like a soft floorboard finally giving way beneath your feet. It began with a cold breath, too sudden to belong to the evening, a sharpness in the air, thin and dry. Then the light dimmed, not in color but in shape as, though the sky itself had forgotten its edges. Snow came next, not flakes, not flurries, just white, endless and immediate. The wind returned without warning, but this wasn't the playful breeze that had once lifted Rue from an attic, nor the thoughtful gust that carried riddles and memories. This wind had no face, no voice. It howled without sound, twisted without rhythm. Rue was caught mid-air. There was no path to follow, no feather to chase. Just spin and tumble, faster and faster, as if the sky and earth had unraveled and tangled themselves back together in the wrong order. Everything disappeared. The ground, the stars, the warmth that had settled in Rue's threads after meeting the dreamcatcher, gone. White filled every space, and nothing held still long enough to be named. Rue spun until direction lost its meaning. It was no longer moving forward or backward, or even falling. It simply was, and even that began to fade. In the hush of the storm, voices began to whisper, not loud, not angry, just constant. countless, like flakes that didn't land but hung around, brushing softly against thought. You are nothing, you are lost, you are forgotten. Rue tried to answer, but nothing in its fibers knew how. Its shape curled in, pulled tighter, like it could tuck itself into memory and hide. But even memory felt distant now, like music half remembered or a name at the tip of a tongue. The cold wasn't cruel, it didn't bite, but it seeped. It moved through the spaces Rue had always kept warm, the parts that remembered laughter, the places that once knew how to carry a dream, and it hushed them. For the first time, Rue didn't wonder where the dream had gone. It wondered if it had ever been one. Maybe it had just been a scarf, old, forgotten. Maybe it had never carried anything but dust and hope, too thin to hold. The snow didn't answer, it just kept falling. Or maybe Rue was falling. It was hard to tell. There was no sky to look to, no river below, no trail, no wind with a name. Just soft white pressing gently from every side, until the only thing Rue could feel was the weight of not knowing what it was anymore. The cold wrapped it without malice, like a blanket meant to comfort but too heavy to lift. And Rue stopped moving, not because it wanted to, but because it couldn't remember how. There was no warmth left in its threads, no songs humming low, no glow of silver thread newly woven. Even the cave's quiet, glowing truth felt like a story someone else had lived. Rue had been something, it was sure of that once. But now, deep beneath the snow, all it could feel was the question. Maybe I was never a dream, just something left behind. The blizzard whispered nothing new, and that, somehow, was the hardest part. Silence didn't always feel empty, but this one did. This silence was the kind that didn't echo, the kind that didn't even try. Rue lay there, curled in on itself like the smallest thought, lost in a white that had no edge and no end. Time passed, or didn't. Rue couldn't tell. And in that stillness, beneath layers of snow that held no warmth, beneath voices that had nothing kind left to Saru, waited. Not for rescue, not even for light, just waited, because even the softest things, it thought, can vanish. And maybe that was the way of forgotten dreams. To fade without sound, to be covered until no one remembers where they were left. Maybe, or maybe not, but Rue couldn't know, not yet. The snow had quieted into stillness, and even stillness had settled into something deeper, something close to forgetting. Beneath the white Rue lay tucked into the hush, no longer searching, no longer hoping, not even waiting, just there, thin and soft and without shape, like a whisper that had lost its place in the story. The wind had moved on. The blizzard had tired of speaking. Only the cold remained, heavy and wordless. Then, beneath the layered quiet, came a sound. Not sharp or loud, but low, like something waking from inside the earth. A hum, soft as a cradle-rocking song, barely more than a breath, but carrying something that didn't belong to the cold. It moved slowly across the snow, wrapped in fur the color of night. A cat, small but not fragile, light on her feet but heavy with meaning. Her eyes, when they opened, held the kind of knowing that comes from waiting, not watching. And her paws pressed gently into the snow, not leaving prints but memory. She moved toward Rue without hesitation, as if she'd always known where to find the lost thread beneath the frost. When she reached Rue, she didn't speak. She didn't pull or shake or ask anything. She curled herself beside the scarf, folding into its side the way only cats can, part warmth, part gravity, part silent promise. Her purring began low. It wasn't a sound you heard first. It was one you felt, and then she sang. Not with grandeur, not for applause, but the way someone sings to the sky just to remind the stars that voices still rise. Not all who sleep are lost, not all that fades is gone. Even threads that fray with frost still hum their quiet song. Her voice was old, but not tired, like lullabies passed from hand to hand, through time and twilight and all the little aches that live between. Rue stirred, barely, a faint twitch in a fold of fabric. Nothing anyone else might have noticed, but the cat did. She touched Rue with her paw, careful and sure, as if pressing the first key of a long-forgotten piano. Dreams don't disappear, she said gently. They just wait for the right ears. And she looked at Rue, then not to be seen, but so Rue might feel what it was to be looked at with kindness. Not expectation, not purpose, just kindness. From somewhere hidden in the shadow of her ear, she pulled a tiny silver bell. It glinted like a drop of moonlight caught in her fur. She placed it gently onto Rue's threadbare end. "So you'll never forget your sound," she whispered. The bell didn't ring right away. It wasn't time, but Rue felt it. The weight was nearly nothing, but it changed something. Inside, deep where the cold hadn't reached, a flicker, small but real. The snow around them didn't melt, ... The wind didn't return with answers, but the silence began to shift. Not disappear, soften, like a sigh after holding breath too long. Rue didn't uncurl, not yet. It didn't need to. Healing, after all, doesn't start with movement. It starts with noticing that you are not alone. The cat stayed curled beside Rue, her tail wrapping like a question mark around both of them. She didn't purr for herself. She purred because someone needed to hear it. And in that still place, tucked between frost and fur and almost forgotten dreams, Rue began to hum, not out loud, not even in memory, but in the way a thread remembers how it once held warmth. The stars above blinked softly behind thin clouds, and the moon tilted just slightly, as if listening. The cat blinked back, and Rue, for the first time in what felt like forever, did not feel like a thing unraveling. It felt like a beginning, a very quiet one, but a beginning all the same. Night had taken hold in the softest way, like someone drawing a warm blanket over the day. Stars blinked shyly from behind scattered clouds, their light not sharp, but kind, like old friends showing up after a long silence just to sit with you. Rue floated beneath them, no longer driven by wind or wonder. It moved gently now, guided not by direction but by something quieter, inner tug, soft as breath. The snow had faded behind. So had the storm. What remained was stillness, and Rue didn't resist it. For the first time in what felt like lifetimes, Rue didn't think about the dream it had lost. It didn't search the skies or the ground or the shadows for clues. It simply was, drifting in moonlight, held in hush, listening. There, in that quiet, something small began to stir, not outside, but within. A vibration, delicate and even, like the first hum of a tuning fork finding its voice. The little bell tied to Rue's fringe quivered, not from cold, but from memory. Rue hummed. It wasn't a tune it planned, not a melody it knew, but it rose from somewhere deep in the weave of its threads, born from what it had carried, what it had seen, what had stayed with it even in the silence. The rustle of elder leaf returning to the earth. The flicker of little flame remembering it was still light. The sigh of the river when it found its voice again. The purr of the cat who sang not for answers, but so Rue would not feel alone. All those sounds soft, strong, nearly forgotten wove together now into a lullaby that was not for someone else, but for Rue itself. I am stitched from stories. I am warmed by remembering. I dream not to escape, but to belong. Rue didn't speak the words. They were simply there, shaped in the hush around it, caught in the rhythm of its motion, echoed in the bell's faint ring. It had spent so long believing that dreams had to be found, that meaning lived somewhere far away on the next breeze, beneath the next leaf, in the hands of someone who remembered it. But now it saw something new. All those moments weren't detours. They weren't scattered pieces. They were threads, and Rue was made of them. Each memory had been gently sewn into its fabric, not as decoration, but as foundation, not just to hold, but to become. Rue didn't glow brightly. There was no burst of light, no grand unveiling. But in the quiet, beneath the watching stars, it began to shine from within, a faint shimmer, like silver caught in breath, a pulsing thread that flickered softly in time with the hum it carried. It didn't burn. It didn't blaze. It remembered, and remembering was enough. As Rue floated across a stretch of sky that looked almost like water, it felt lighter not in body, but in being. The weight of seeking had loosened. The ache of loss had softened. It still missed the boy, the attic, the hush of sleep it used to hold. But now it understood something that had taken a long time to unfold. Dreams don't just live in the people who dream them. They live in the things that carry them. And Rue had always been a carrier. Now it was something more. It was a keeper, not of one dream, but many. Not just of warmth or sleep or quiet, but of every note it had gathered along the way. It didn't know where it would go next, ... But that no longer felt like a hole to fill. It felt like a song still being written, and Rue, humming gently, drifted beneath the stars, its silver thread glowing like a single note left in the air just a moment longer than expected held, not because it must be, but because it could. Morning came with a soft kind of gold, the kind that doesn't rush in, but stretches slowly across rooftops like warm fingers smoothing out the folds of the sky. The wind had quieted to a hush, and everything, the clouds, the trees, even the birds seemed to be listening for something, as if a story was about to end or begin. Rue floated just above a sleepy town, not quite remembering the name of the streets, but feeling the tug of something familiar. The rooftops looked different, repainted in fresh colors, their chimneys slimmer than before. Cars sat in driveways where bicycles used to lean. Trees once young now cast long, grown-up shadows. But it wasn't the roofs or roads that called to Rue. It was something smaller, quieter, something behind one particular window, on a street it couldn't name but knew by heart. The attic. It was still there, tucked beneath the slanted roof, its window dusty and crooked, like an old smile remembered halfway through a dream. Rue slipped through the crack between wood and frame, brushing past forgotten boxes and a blanket that had lost its smell. The room hadn't changed, not really, but the feeling had. There were new footsteps on the floorboards, lighter ones, full of wonder and questions. And downstairs, a voice, a child's, laughing through breakfast, tripping through hallway stories, echoing up into the corners where old memories once curled in sleep. Rue drifted lower, quiet as breath. A little girl had just moved into the house. She was still small enough to believe in things that grown-ups had learned to forget. And tonight was her first night in a room that didn't yet know her name. Her mother had unpacked the last box and kissed her forehead, then left her with the soft hush of unfamiliar walls. But the girl didn't sleep. She sat on the edge of her bed, clutching a pillow, her nose pink from crying. She didn't know how to explain it. She just missed something she couldn't name, something warm, something she had never had but somehow remembered anyway. The mother came back. Gently, not with answers, just presence. She sat beside the girl and rubbed her back. Then she opened an old wooden chest tucked against the wall. It had belonged to the house before they did. Inside were papers, some broken ornaments, and a scarf. Worn, faded at the ends, but soft, and stitched with something more than thread. She lifted it out, unsure why. "Let's try this," she whispered, wrapping it carefully around her daughter's shoulders. Rue didn't ask who it was anymore. It didn't wonder whether it belonged or whether it had a purpose. It only settled. It curled itself around the girl with the same quiet care it had once known, folding across her back, warming her arms, brushing against the small rise and fall of her breath. The girl leaned into it, her breathing slowed, her tears stopped, and as her eyes began to close, she hummed just barely a tune that wasn't hers, but had lived in Rue all along. A lullaby, gathered from leaves and flames and rivers and cats and wind. A song made from being seen. Rue didn't need to glow anymore. It didn't need to hum. It only needed to hold. And in that holding, the dream it had searched for wasn't found. It was remembered. A dream, once remembered, remembers you too. Outside, the moon climbed higher, quiet and round. The stars blinked gently, keeping watch, and Rue stayed, not because it had returned to where it came from, but because it had arrived where it was most needed. Not every journey ends with discovery. Some end with belonging, and this one, at last, had come home. The thread that became the wind. Time moved differently now. The house no longer counted it by hours or days, but by size in the floorboards and the soft rise and fall of sleep. The attic, once filled with the weight of stillness, now glowed with quiet life. The little girl no longer cried at bedtime. She no longer clutched at the corners of the pillow or asked the night to wait while she found her way to sleep. She dreamed instead. She dreamed of rivers that sighed lullabies through moonlight, of leaves that let go with laughter in their veins, of cats with velvet paws and voices like honey, and of scarves that drifted through the air not as fabric, but as stories held in thread. Rue had stayed, tucked close, night after night, folded gently around her shoulders, beside her cheek, beneath the hush of her dreams. But it was changing, not disappearing, not falling apart, just becoming softer. The threads that once held tightly now relaxed, as if they understood something deeper than they had before. Rue had wrapped itself around so many dreams, held so many breaths, collected so many songs, and it could feel that story nearing its next line. It wasn't sadness, it was return. Like a lullaby nearing its final note. Each night, as the girl drifted deeper into sleep, Rue grew lighter. its corners curled a little more loosely. Its warmth shifted from heat to memory, from weight to whisper. The bell still hung from Rue's edgy, a tiny shimmer of silver, quiet and kind. It hadn't rung in weeks, not since the night the girl had first stopped crying. It didn't need to. Its sound lived in the air now, in the way dreams shaped themselves around her sleep. But on one particular night, when the sky was especially still, when even the wind outside seemed to pause and listen, the bell rang once. Just once. Soft as a memory being remembered in the middle of a yawn. The girl stirred but didn't wake. Her lips moved slightly, curling into the hint of a smile, and her hand reached out, not searching, just touching, as if to thank something for staying. Rue felt it, felt the warmth of that touch, not on the threads, but deep in the space between them. And then, without movement or effort, Rue whispered not aloud, but in the way that stories speak when no one is trying to tell them, "I have wrapped the dream again. Now I can become the wind." The room stayed still. Then, like the slow exhale of a dandelion seed finding flight, Rue's threads began to lift. Not all at once, just softly. A shimmer rose in the air, like silver rising through mist. The fabric loosened, not falling but unfolding. Threads unknotted themselves with grace, unwinding not into absence but into something weightless, present in a new way. The bell remained for a moment longer, then spun once in the quiet, as if saying thank you, and followed. A breeze moved through the room, not cold, not sudden, just a hush that curled under the blanket and through the corners of the room. A hush that sang without words, and Rue was no longer a scarf. It was a whisper carried in wind, a part of the lullaby the world sings when it wants to be gentle. It slipped out through the window, danced through tree branches, passed over rooftops, and drifted into the sky. The little girl slept on, and the stars blinked in rhythm, knowing Rue had not ended, only changed. Now, somewhere in the world, when a child closes their eyes and the night is too big to hold, a breeze might pass through and settle over them, light as a thread, warm as a dream remembered just in time. That breeze might be Rue, and if you listen closely, you might hear it hum. The world doesn't always fall asleep at once. Some lights linger, some thoughts stay up a little longer, but eventually, one by one, the windows dim, the clocks soften their ticking, and even the moon, full and glowing, begins to blink slower, as if it too is nodding off. And somewhere, maybe not far from you, or maybe just near enough to be felt, a small wind stirs. It doesn't rush, it doesn't rattle. It slips in like a secret, gentle as a blanket pulled up by someone who knows just where your shoulders end. It carries no voice, but it carries something quiet, something soft. In rooms across the world, where children breathe slow into their pillows, where grown-ups pause mid-thought and let go, and where dreams line up just beyond the edges of closed eyes, that wind hums. You might not hear it at first, you might not know it's there, but if your room is quiet enough, and your heart is still enough, you may feel the hush against your cheek, ... Not cold, not warm, just enough. It doesn't say your name, but it knows it. It doesn't speak in words. But if you listen not with ears, but with that little part of you that still believes in wishing wells and old songs, then maybe, just maybe, you'll hear a thread sing. Not all that fades is gone, not all who drift forget. Some dreams wrap you in dawn and hum while you sleep, yet that's all it says. It doesn't need to say more, because you already know. You know it in the way your breath softens when the wind touches your window, in the way your body curls toward the memory of warmth, in the way something inside you lets go without falling. And so, if you ever find an old scarf in a drawer you forgot to open, one that smells a little like cedar and a little like something else you can't quite name, take it out. Don't shake it, don't wash it right away, just hold it, place it beside your pillow. It may not speak, but it remembers. It remembers warmth and laughter and quiet. And the dream you didn't know you had until just now. And when you close your eyes, it won't wrap itself around you like it once did. It no longer needs to. It will simply rest beside you, close enough to hum, because even dreams, like people, don't need to be loud to be real. And even dreams, yes, even the old ones, need someone to dream them. So go on now, sleep. The wind is here, the night is kind, and the dream is ready. So maybe dreams aren't things we chase, or even things we keep. Maybe they're soft threads we carry that carry us in return. And perhaps, when we pause, really pause, we might notice them humming in the quiet. What dreams have been waiting for you to remember? If this story touched something inside you, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Night Radios so you won't miss the next gentle journey waiting just beyond the stars.